Hello and welcome to Three Kitchens, a home cooking podcast. I'm Erin Walker and I'm joined by my two co-hosts, Heather Dyer.
Hello.
Hi, Heather. And Sarah Somasundaram.
Hello. You got it. You got it.
Good, good.
I'm looking at you with expectation like, is it good?
You got my last name right.
Okay, so I have a question for you, Sarah, before we start.
Oh, for me?
For you.
Uh-oh.
It's
I'm
something
nervous.
that I feel like you need to share with everyone.
Oh, okay.
You recently posted about it on your Facebook. I'm giving you all these little hints. Last year, when we were locked inside,
Okay.
you made a new friend.
I did. Oh, we're going to talk about Christy.
Yeah. Can you tell us about Christy?
Okay.
Oh, my word.
So, my neighbor, he's like this much older man and he lives by himself and I think he's kind of lonely and so he makes friends with all the little creatures around him. So he feeds the birds and he feeds the squirrels and they all know his routine. He's got a routine, like he comes out, all the animals are like waiting for him, like it's like a Disney movie. And so one day I was outside and he told me that he was going to visit his niece in BC. And I think he had this hopeful glint in his eye that I would take over from him. And I'm like, no way, I'm freaking, feeding the squirrels because I can't stand squirrels. They come and steal all my plants and all that stuff. But then these crows started coming around waiting for their food. And I really liked this one in particular because it was a really quiet crow. It was bigger. It was well behaved. And I started feeding just that one crow with raw cashews because my kid's guitar teacher also studies birds for the Alberta government. And so she was telling me what to feed it and all giving me all these tips. And we became friends. And I also had these little candle holders with marbles in them outside. And so the magpies would steal these marbles and give it to this crow, who would then return it to me as a gift for the cashews. And why these magpies were doing that was because the crow would then leave a few crumbs behind for the magpies. So it was all like this one big sort of scheme that was happening. But I love this crow, and this crow's name is Christy. And of course, winter come, Christy migrated, I think, over the Rockies to BC is what I understand that they do. And he's back as of last week. He came back.
Yes, I was so excited.
He tapped on my window like he usually does. He stood right outside my door. I came out with the cashews. I had them all ready because I realized the crows were coming back, and I got a big stash of raw cashews for him. And so, yeah, my friend's back.
I love that he returned. I'm fascinated by crows. I have all these little crow stories and crow things that I've learned over the years. And I love that you have made friends with the crow.
Yes. And his name's Christy.
Christy the crow.
I named him Christy. Yeah. Christy the crow.
That is, I'm sorry.
Thank you for asking. It put a big smile on my face.
As long as he doesn't share any of those nuts with the squirrels.
No, he doesn't care for the squirrels. He doesn't really.
It's like some kind of like bird mafia thing happening. He's like the Don, and there's like the magpies are like his. The plebes.
Minions.
The minions.
I definitely describe bird culture like mafia culture.
Yeah. Totally. And I'm friends with the Don guys. So, come on. Yeah. I just realized Erin was drinking out of a SpongeBob SquarePants coffee mug. It's so funny.
That's what's left in the coffee mugs this morning because nobody did the dishes last night.
Oh,
I bought these for the kids years ago because they like having their own little mug for hot chocolate or whatever.
Cute.
Now I like it.
So, Erin, you've got, we don't even know what you're doing. This is a complete surprise for us.
I'm cooking out of this cookbook. So I bought this cookbook many years ago. Wandering through chapters, there were cookbooks for sale. They were like between $5 and $10 a piece.
Nice.
So I just I browsed through them. I picked up one that was like a Thai cooking book, and it's pretty good. It's got a few recipes that I really like. And then I also picked up this book, and it's called A Cook's Tour of Italy, and it's by Joe Famularo. I'm probably saying that wrong.
It's
I think I just guessed what she's making, but go ahead.
Oh. So it's it's a cookbook that it's like reading through somebody's travels through Italy.
Nice.
And this guy is a chef who's published many books.
Okay.
But he's pretty he doesn't have a Facebook page. He's not on Instagram. This book has no pictures in it.
Okay.
It's all just text, which I sometimes find intimidating when it comes to a cookbook. I kind of like seeing pictures. Yeah. So, I mean, I don't know why I picked this up because, like 10 or 15 years ago, I was definitely not good enough to cook out of this book. And so it sat on my shelf for a really long time. And I've gone back and there's a few things in it that I now love.
Okay. You have made some recipes from it since?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. I have, last year when we had all of our tomatoes come out of our garden, I made the slow cooked roasted plum tomatoes on my barbecue. And then I popped those all into jars and froze them. And so it was having these like deliciously roasted tomatoes that like I could blend it up and use it as a tomato sauce. I could just toss it in soups and stews. Okay. You could just eat them like this. But it was just a good thing to do with all of the tomatoes we had. And there's an Italian lentil soup in here that I really like as well. That's got bacon and a bunch of lentils and onions, carrots, celery, and broth. And it's a simple, easy thing to make. It's tasty, and I really like it. And I love how this book is written. He writes this book, and he does a little section on each area of Italy. So all the different like provinces. So you go from Rome, and then you go to Tuscany, and then you go to the Italian Riviera. And he talks about different foods that he eats in those places. And he sets it out like, I went to this restaurant and this is what we ate. And here's a recipe list that will serve 4 to 6 people. So you can entertain them just like you're in Tuscany. It's like going on a vacation through food while you read the book.
Nice.
Okay. So one of the things that I marked off in this book that I wanted to make right from the get-go, but I never have, is a focaccia bread.
Is that what you were thinking,
Oh,
Heather?
that is not what I was thinking.
Okay.
I remember you talking about, it must not have been from this book.
Oh.
But it was like a pie with pasta in it or something.
Oh, this is in that book too, and I haven't made it yet.
Oh, okay. Maybe you'll make that for us another time.
Close.
Future episodes,
okay.
Same cookbook. It seems like it's getting too warm out to make a pasta baked within a pie crust.
No, never.
And maybe I'll do that when we can all get together again or something, because that seems like a hearty meal to feed a lot of people.
She's always sharing her carbs and like cake. I know. And, oh my God.
We're not doing that this week. So I'm almost a little bit glad, even though I'm very intrigued by that idea of the pasta baked in the pie. I don't think I want to eat it right now.
After all that cake from last week.
Yeah. Yes. Too much cake.
Not too much, but
it was a bit too much.
It was a bit too much.
Yeah.
It's okay.
Okay, go ahead, Erin.
All right. So he has, at the beginning, he's got basics of bread, broth, and pasta. So he's got a few pasta recipes, how to make a basic pasta, how to make some basic broths, and then how to make some basic breads. And his basic focaccia bread is a focaccia with sage, olive oil, and salt. So I don't know about you guys, but I love the idea of focaccia bread. I love it every time I go and eat somewhere and you get that, like your appetizer.
Yeah.
Oh, I've really wanted to make this, but I've always kind of been a bit intimidated by this book with it having no pictures. It kind of makes some assumptions about what your cooking skill level is.
Okay.
So focaccia is a pizza dough bread. And since we've done some pizza dough stuff
Oh,
lately,
interesting. Okay.
I thought that I would delve into this one. So this one just has, all right, a package of yeast, a teaspoon of sugar, and a cup of warm water. And you want to mix those together and let it stand. And then you put your flour into a bowl and make a well in the center. You add your yeast mixture, your leaves, your olive oil, and your salt. Stir it together until a dough forms, and then work it on a floured surface, kneading it until it is smooth and elastic. Okay. I think I'm going to be doing that in my mixer.
I was going to ask.
Nice.
Yep.
Okay.
Nope, we're going down the right path with this.
Good.
I have learned. And so once you've kneaded your dough, you're going to put it in a clean bowl, cover with a moist cloth, and let it rise until doubled. So about an hour, it says. So I'm going to use your proofing hack, and I'm going to do the bulk fermentation if we're going to keep with our lingo we've been using. That's
right. Look at the things we've learned.
See, we sound so good now. Right. So then once you've got the rise done, you punch the dough down, you shape it into a ball, and you put it back into the bowl, and you let it rise again until it's doubled again. Okay. So that would be your proofing step.
Oh, Erin, you've got this down.
Sarah, you have taught me.
Okay, I have a quick question.
Hey,
you said leaves. Does that mean you're using fresh herbs in there?
I have some dried crushed sage. I don't have fresh sage leaves right now. If I did have fresh ones, that's what this recommends to use. But you can also use the dried chopped stuff in there.
All right.
Maybe I'll find a way to grow sage or buy some sage fresh.
I have some that grows in my yard in the summer. At least I used to. I assume it'll come back. So if I get some, I'll give it to you.
Hey, if this works out, that might be the next step. Thank you, Heather.
Mm-hmm.
So punch down your dough, fit it into the pizza pan, or I might use my pizza stone on my barbecue because you know me. You want to brush it all over with olive oil.
Yeah.
And then let it rise for another 30 minutes.
Okay.
So like we're really
making this really airy.
Well, like you keep rising it and crushing it down and rising it and crushing it down. And, you know, when you describe a pizza dough, how when you pop your fingers in and then it doesn't bounce back.
Yeah.
I think we're really like killing that yeast, you know, like so it doesn't go too puffy. We want it to be denser and more thick.
Right.
Because so what I learned about focaccia is that usually it's sold in a bakery by weight, and they make these huge slabs of focaccia dough in Italy. And so you would go and you would buy your piece and they would sell it by weight.
Oh, that's interesting. So I would never have I would never have described focaccia bread as dense, but I kind of see what you're talking about now. Like it is heavy.
It's a heavy dough, right? Like you're taking all that air and puff and you're kind of packing it all down into a small, thin package.
And you put like those dimples in the top.
Yeah, you put the holes in the...
So that when you drizzle olive oil or something over it afterwards, it has little pockets and...
Yes.
Yeah. So you don't want it to spring back out. You want to keep those little dimples in there when it bakes.
I feel like we've got some experience under our belts to deal with pizza-like doughs. So maybe I'll be able to know what's going on during the process and I won't make any big mistakes. And then you just preheat your oven to 450, bake it about 15 minutes until it's nicely brown and serve it warm.
Or cold, it's still good. I'll take a piece of cold focaccia if you'd like to share with me.
Yeah. So I'm going to try and make this. And then the Italian lentil soup that I was talking about it's kind of a staple in our house. We eat it frequently. My kids are kind of lentils, but I love it.
Of course.
And so I'm going to make this focaccia bread with that lentil soup because I think all those things sound delicious together. And, you know, like I love this idea of making focaccia bread. I don't know if you guys remember in the Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat series on Netflix.
I do. Yes, my memory went right into that episode. Yeah. But she was making focaccia bread in that beautiful kitchen in some Italian countryside.
Yes.
Well, of
Remember
course,
that?
yeah. So I'm going to be making this in my renovated in 1975 kitchen.
But just pretend
Yeah.
you're there. That's how
Yeah.
I do it.
I'm going to be barbecuing it in my backyard.
There you go.
Kids' sticks and toys all over the place. It's not quite as romantic, but I will be in Italy in my
That's
heart.
right. There you go.
Absolutely. Oh, well, I can't wait. I've always
I'm
wanted to try
excited.
too.
Oh,
I
okay.
once, like many years ago, I had a coworker who made focaccia and would bring it in. It was like a thing he did, like he would make focaccia and he'd bring it into the office and he'd make different ones. So like every few weeks, another focaccia would appear in the kitchen and we'd all be like, oh, like, give me some of that. And he gave me the recipe because I said, I really want to make this. And I believe he made it in a cast iron frying pan. Because it was always like a round loaf, essentially.
Yes.
And he gave me the recipe, and I think I've lost it somewhere along the way since I left.
So what kind of toppings
work.
did he put on the focaccia bread? You said
Herbs.
He brought different ones. Okay.
Like herbs, sage and rosemary. So he'd make that, or the next time it would be like Parmesan.
Nice.
Or like, I don't know, I can't even remember now, but just different herbs and flavorings. And it was so good that I really wanted to make it, and then I never did. So.
And this cookbook says various ingredients can be worked into the dough or served as a topping. Cheese, ham, olives, onions, oregano, pancetta, rosemary. I mean, there's ones that have anchovies, capers, chicory, fennel. Oh my God. Like you can just, if we get this basic recipe down, we can just add whatever we like to it whenever we like. You know, it's one of those recipes where this is kind of a basic start, and once you figure it out, you can put your own thing into it. And that's kind of my favorite, is each time making it a little bit different and a little bit better.
So the two questions I had, because if I'm going to allow you to do this first. I'm going to get the tips and then I'm going to try it.
You got it. Kind of like the empanadas you made last weekend.
Yes. But you're talking about active yeast. Okay. And then you're talking about all-purpose flour or pizza flour?
Ooh, you know what? I never looked that deep into these things. Unbleached all-purpose flour.
Okay. And then when you said pizza pan, what is a pizza pan? Like, is that just like
some sort of sheet that you would bake pizza on? Like I have those round pizza pans. I think I'm not going to do that. I think I'm going to do this on my pizza stone. I love the cast iron idea too.
I think you'd have to play around because the heat with the cast iron is different, right?
Be hotter.
It's because those pans get so hot and they hold their heat that you'd really, especially on the barbecue, I think you'd really have to play with.
I'd have to be careful, but the pizza stone can be like that too.
Yeah.
And that's where like I've kind of learned to heat up the barbecue and then put my thing in and turn off the burner underneath so it doesn't overheat, because it will always overshoot the air temp. If I keep the burner on directly underneath, I keep my side burners on, so it kind of just maintains the heat all around everything rather than directly on it.
Right.
And it sounds like it'll bake quickly.
And it's only 15 minutes. So
you'll be peeking in the barbecue, like watching it under the crack. That's what I'd be doing. Like, oh, what's happening in there?
Yeah, I'm pumped about this. I think if I can figure this out, get ready for more carbs in your life.
No. Can you somehow make it carb free?
No.
I know.
I refuse.
I know.
We might have to do our workout sessions 5 days a week after this instead of 3.
I'll just put the focaccia at the top of the hill when we're running hills.
Yes.
You run up to the top of the hill and you dip it in your, eat it, and then you run back down.
Or put it, or hang it from a stick away from our mouths as we try to get toward it.
Like a carrot.
Yeah.
I would not run for a carrot, but I might run for focaccia.
We've got possible focaccia, a delicious focaccia bread, and a workout plan.
Yeah. Excellent. Thanks, Erin.
One and the same. No, I think it'll be a really good. I love having like a bread on the side of a soup or on the side of a meal.
I think in the pizza episode, we got talking about putting flowers and things on, like making it almost like a breadstick. You could do this with focaccia. You could put your zucchini flour and your other flowers and herbs and things from your garden and really play with
Do you have any flowers out yet?
Not yet. Not yet.
By the time this episode comes out, you'll be such an old pro that maybe we could take a photo with like your focaccia with.
That's a good idea.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think about that. Oh, that sounds great.
That's going to be really tasty, Erin. I can't wait to try it.
Yeah, I think this will be,
this
is the perfect time to try this. This has been earmarked in that book forever.
And I'm so excited someone else is playing with dough. Like, yay! It's not me.
That's my go-to. I started out baking.
Mm-hmm.
That's my go-to. I like working with bread.
Because now I'm curious about French bread. You have a recipe for that?
Hey, I've got one in my French cookbook. I have yet to try, so I'll share. You can try it.
When you say you, I hope you're looking at Erin at this point.
Sarah, you just said you want to make French bread.
I do.
So I'm looking at you right now.
The French bread at a regular grocery store doesn't cut it, especially when you have been to Europe and tried their French bread, right?
It doesn't taste the same.
Yeah. Well, I can't wait to try this and share it with you guys. And maybe I'll even save a little bit of soup so you can have the soup and the bread, because this soup is so good. I love
it.
Yes, please.
So I'll see that I make extra, and then I'll put a little bit. It might only be a couple spoonfuls. I will put
That's okay.
I'll put some aside so you can have some focaccia and some soup.
Nice. Thank you.
Yummy. Can't wait.
Good luck to you.
Okay.
We'll be right back.
Focaccia is not only made as a savory bread, it can also be topped with sugar, honey, cinnamon, berries, plums, and other stone fruits. I can't wait for summer fruit season.
Welcome back, and let's find out from Erin how her focaccia turned out. So was it fantastic, or was it a different kind of F-word experience?
It wasn't bad, but my feeling is that I didn't make what I was imagining I was making.
Oh.
Well, yes and no. So let me take you through what I did. Just making a very basic yeast dough, and it's similar to a pizza dough, only it rises twice rather than once. And I have pizza dough in the oven today, and I had to remind myself that it's only rising once. I'm not making focaccia. Don't mess this up.
You're really confusing yourself by making all these breads.
I know. It's well. Anyway, so I let it double, punched it down, let it double again. And then I was able to let it, while it rose, I heated up my barbecue and got it nice and smoking hot, and put my pizza stone on there. In the 30 minutes that it had to rise, once I had rolled it out and stuck my little finger holes in it, I noticed there were some big bubbles.
Oh.
That was like sign one, like, oh, this is, maybe I didn't proof it enough. Like I had done the 1 hour proof, punched it down, and then did the second hour proof and thought, well, whatever, like I'm not going to go back now. You've kind of already committed once you've got to that one where I was at. And so I noticed those big bubbles and thought,
And that's not what you want? I don't know what you should be looking for.
So based on the description of it telling me that it's usually cut into slabs and sold by weight, it's a fairly thin bread. Oh. And while there's lots of bubbles in it, but it's very densely packed. So it's many little bubbles. And the outside's usually crispy or like harder. Yeah. And then the inside's like soft and bready. So that's not what happened really. So, first sign that something's not going right was these big bubbles. And I was like, maybe I could have let it rise for longer next time, because
the first time or the second time?
I don't know. Overall.
I don't know.
All I know is it didn't go well. So I would say maybe I should spend some more time letting it rise. It was very light and fluffy when it came out of the barbecue. And I mean, it was delicious. We ate it. We dipped it in the oil. I liked the flavor. I really liked the texture inside. I thought it was really good inside. It was soft and moist and not super dense. Like it was fluffy enough. Like I loved where the spots where it hadn't had those big bubbles. I liked the texture. And then the outside was just kind of like a bun.
Yeah.
Was it? Okay.
I thought it wasn't as hard on the outside as I expected it to be.
Maybe it's been a long time since I've had a focaccia, but it really was freaking good.
It was very
the flavor.
So delicious.
Yeah. I'm glad you guys like the flavor too, but I feel like it wasn't focaccia. It was bread. It was yummy. It wasn't focaccia. And one of the things that makes me think this is my big bubbles. And then in our last episode, we had also talked about how we watched Salt, Fat, Acid, Heat, and that her episode on fat, she's in Italy and she's making this focaccia. And
oh yes, I remember that.
I think we've all just been like, oh, I want to be in that place.
Yeah.
And so I went back and I watched that again. Yeah, like my bread was too light and fluffy and not crispy enough on the outside. And the process was different.
It seemed like it had risen more. Like it was taller.
Yeah.
Than I was expecting.
Yeah.
Yes.
So maybe that's where kind of that more of that air came into it. It made it rise up more.
Yeah.
And
maybe you just invented a new bread recipe because it was good. I'd eat it again.
It was so good, yeah.
And then you gave it to us with that lentil stew.
Oh, that's right. I forgot I packed you guys that lunch.
That was so
and
good.
Then, and I didn't, that was my lunch, by the way. That was my lunch for that day. And the kids were kind of like fluttering around me going, can I have another piece? Can I have another piece? And I'm like, go away. But because when you dropped it off, you had said, I think I kind of effed this up. I effed up the focaccia bread. The only thing that then I was maybe gave me an idea of what you may have meant was when I saw the picture of it, it looked like it was quite risen. And that's it. I'll still take it. It was so delicious, right?
Yeah, for sure. I also thought I expected more of those dimples on the top.
That's right. Yeah.
It kind of, like you said, it was more like a bun. It was a bit smoother on the surface than I expected that it might be.
Yeah.
And I think that might have been that rising. All those dimples got kind of pushed up.
I also noticed that I possibly didn't have my barbecue hot enough.
Because what temperature was this supposed
to bake at 450.
450.
Well, that's pretty hot.
And so I got the barbecue temperature up there when I first put the stone on, but then I think I didn't let it warm up enough. And then when I put my bread on, the stone wasn't as hot as it needed to be. And so it actually, I would say I actually cooked it at a lower temperature, which also was that was my other thing that I think I did that may have messed this up.
So when you say that those big bubbles happened in your dough, are you suggesting that it was overproofed? Or too much yeast?
Not proofed enough. Like I was almost thinking that, through the process of making it rise twice, we are really putting the yeast through their gears, right? Like they're not as active, they're not as excited and ready to make more gas.
Yeah.
essentially for us. And and so we've kind of, we've let them do it the first time. We've let them do it the second time. And so in that last 30 minutes, we want them to do a lot of little, like we want a lot of little bubbles, not like, I'm really excited and I'm going to just go at it.
Okay. So
I love how the bubbles are now getting voices.
Yeah.
They're becoming characters.
They're beasts.
I'm getting too big.
This is how I think science, guys. Everyone has a personality.
Erin, I need more time here. I need more time.
Yeah. Exactly.
Back off.
I will still be delicious.
Hey, Sarah's proteins talked in one of our last episodes. So I'm gonna I'm not the only one.
No, you're not.
So then so these are the two things that I spotted as it needed more time to rise because the yeast was still too excited by the time it was just doing that final rest before baking it. So I think it needed longer rising time. And I think my barbecue needed to be hotter. So it's been a little while since we recorded the first half. So I had extra time and I decided to go and make another focaccia bread and see if I could correct it and do it a little bit better, and maybe see if some of these things I thought were wrong are the things that are wrong. So I let it rise this time so it was an hour pretty much for each rise that I did the first time, and it pretty much doubled in that time. So instead I let it triple in size.
Okay.
So instead of going like double in size, I let it triple. So it went from 1 to 3. And that took about an hour and a half to hour 45. So in total, I added an extra hour to my rising, more or less. And so when I punched it down and put my little dimples into the bread and then let it sit, when I came back after 30 minutes, it had there were no big bubbles on it. And so I thought, ooh, this is good. Maybe I've solved one of my problems. And then I did what I should have done the first time, and I let my stone come up to temperature after I put it onto the barbecue. It definitely turned out a lot better the second time. It was a more consistent disc shape. It didn't do that big rise in the middle.
Right.
It had the dimples stayed in a little bit better.
Yeah.
It definitely, like, it could have cooked at a hotter heat. Honestly, I could have left it and get it crunchier.
Oh, okay.
You know, like I like that crispy outside of the bread, and you know, it was more crispy, but it wasn't as crispy as it, in my opinion, could be. So my next try, I'd like to do the cast iron pan that you mentioned that your coworker did with his focaccia, because I think that might help my temperature situation. So it's definitely getting better.
So you're still working on it. Though I do think that you invented a great bread and you should find a name for it and market it, because it was good.
And what did you put? You put in like rosemary, or?
I put sage in, only sage.
Oh, only sage. Okay. I would have thought rosemary too, but okay.
It was really tasty.
Yeah, I only did sage on it. So I really liked that. Again, I would love to play with that when we have some fresh sage out in the yard. And all that kind of stuff. And I mean, instead of getting a bread at the grocery store, I would make this instead of a French bread and use it in the same sort of way. And that's essentially what I did the second time I made it. Even though it turned out more focaccia-like, it was still better to have this bread than like one of those crappy loaves that, I don't know. I just feel so disappointed with store bread. Lately. So, and I mean, I think I kind of messed it up pretty good the first time. You know, I didn't let it rise enough. I kind of didn't get the temperature totally right. You know, it didn't totally mess up the bread. This was still delicious.
Yeah, totally.
Even if you mess it up a little bit and you're not the greatest cook with bread, or you're intimidated by bread because you're like, oh, I don't want to mess it up. I think this is a really awesome recipe to start getting yourself familiar with making bread. And I mean, I make bread all the time and I still screwed it up. So
but look what happened. Like,
not because it was hard, but just because I wasn't focusing as much on things.
You were aiming for like a denser, less risen bread. Well, all you got was a taller, fluffier piece of awesome bread. Like, it was like you can't say you screwed it up. You can't call that a failure. It's just a different bread than you were expecting.
It's an invention.
Yeah.
So good.
True enough.
So when you dropped the focaccia bread off and you said you focaccia'd it up, I actually went to one of the cookbooks that I have by Gennaro Contaldo, just to see if he had anything written in it.
Yes.
And this was quite a few weeks ago, so I can't remember everything, but he said that focaccia bread in Italy, unlike what we think it is actually a whole bunch of different kinds of breads. But the one that we are talking about, that you made, that I know of, is from a specific place. But focaccia doesn't actually mean that. Focaccia just means kinds of breads or something like that. So focaccia might look completely different from what we're used to in a different region in Italy.
Right. So maybe you made a specific one. You don't even know.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was reading about that in this book too, because it talks about, in this region, it's called this, in another region, it's called that. This one, it's like this. The other one, it's more like a breadstick. There's all these, and you can make breadsticks using the same kind of recipe. Like you can do roll it into individual things. And I was like, oh, that may have to be something I take on too when I have time. But, to just whip this up as on the side of a soup kind of bread, it doesn't need to be anything special or Italian. And honestly, I thought it was better than some of the white breads I've made, where I've tried to make a white bread loaf. And I struggle with that interior being how I want it to be. I was like, this is the interior I want in my bread loaf. So
I thought it was better than a white dinner bun. Mm-hmm. And I love a good old white bread dinner bun.
Yeah,
with butter. Yeah. I love that. And I thought this was better. I would totally rather have that.
Yeah.
And the spice, the herbs in it were delicious.
Yeah. I really liked that sage.
Mm-hmm.
So what made you think that you should have proofed it to 3 times the size?
I honestly, just a shot in the dark.
Okay.
It was something I could measure because I'm using the Tylenol cup for my kids' children's Tylenol, and they had 1, 2, and 3 mils on it. Mm-hmm. So I was like, all right, if I let it go up to the next step, instead of doubling it, it's tripling it. That's that was my only. I did not read anywhere. I did not get anyone's advice. Okay. I just kind of. I MacGyvered it. I'm going to use Heather's term.
Yeah, that's right. That's the way we do it. Who knew you could wing it with bread? Nice. You wouldn't think you should wing it with a yeast bread, and yet look at that.
Yeah. So that's where I say everyone who wants a fresh loaf of bread on their table, go for this.
This gives me some hope, because I'm not a bread baker.
Yeah.
Because I don't like to mess around. I don't want to deal with the rising and the proofing and the blah, 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 whatever.
Yeah.
But if you can fail at it and it still turns out to be an awesome loaf of bread, then I probably would make it, because I wouldn't worry about it as much.
Right? I'd say anyone should be excited to give this a try. And you could put all your own flavors in. And that's what I'm looking forward to. I was talking to the kids about it, and we have tarragon in our yard. And I put tarragon in my chicken noodle soup. And my son was like, oh, we should make this with tarragon. And I was like, oh, you're so right. And I have chives, and we could make it with chives. You can put it in, you can put anything in it. So I'm so excited. Everyone should make this bread.
Do it.
Even if it's not exactly right, I think you'll still be happy with your bread in the end.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I'd like the recipe, please.
You got it.
My children would like the recipe, please.
Do you know how hard I had to fight to have that bread saved for you guys so that they wouldn't eat it the first time? Because
I think I do.
Half a loaf.
I think I do.
And I packaged yours up and I hid it, because as soon as they saw only half the loaf was there and it was already gone, they were like, where are the girls' packages? I was like, you don't need to know.
No, they should know by now. There's always some reserved to give away. Well, good job, Erin. We quite enjoyed that bread.
Oh, I'm glad.
Thank you. And the stew.
I'm so glad.
The lentil stew.
Oh, yeah. I want to know how you like.
Yeah, I wanted to ask where is that recipe from? And I know you make it quite often.
It is also from my A Cook's Tour of Italy book.
Oh,
okay.
You should borrow this book from me and go through it, because it's it's a gooder.
That was really tasty.
Yeah, I like that lentil soup. I feel like the kids are coming around to it as well, because the night that we had this with the focaccia, they didn't even complain about the lentils. They just
because of the focaccia, I bet.
Oh, and you know what? They even dipped it in the balsamic and the oil, even though it looked really weird. That's the best part, way, right? Yeah. But my kids my kids smell it, the plate full of the oil and the vinegar, and they're like, this kind of smells like vinegar. And they get their backs up, and I'm like, yeah, but if you just, dip a little bit in and then eat it. And they were like, oh, this is really tasty. So
no, it seemed like such a because we were going for a picnic after. So I had the kids' lunches all packed up, and then Erin comes with, it felt so fancy. Lentil soup with focaccia bread. Get away from me, kids.
Go eat your PB&J. I'm having my soup.
Right. Yeah, thank you.
Oh, I'm glad
delicious.
You enjoyed that.
I'm going to give it a try too.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'll pass this book around like the pasta bicycle. and
Nice.
and
one of these
have
days,
some
you
fun with
are
it.
going to make the pasta in a pie.
And one of these days,
thing.
I will go back to this pasta and a pie thing. I do promise I will do that.
On a cold, snowy day or something.
Yeah.
Yes,
I think
that's what we have
to bring in the first snowfall, maybe.
Yeah, and we have to be able to eat that one together.
Yeah,
because the pie crust is not going to hold up to be transported if it's got pasta in it. You know what I mean? It's one of those things you got to make and eat in
such
place.
an odd idea. Whoever came up with that.
It is an odd idea.
It's somebody who really needed carbs that they were like, I need all the carbs.
They were carb loading for a big adventure race or something.
They were going to swim across the Mediterranean and they needed to
put the carbs in the carbs and give me all the carbs.
With a pint of beer.
Yes.
On the side.
It's starting to sound really good. Let's.
Can you tell we're getting hungry and it's almost dinner time? Like, I just want to eat all the food.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, thank you for letting me share this journey with you guys, because I've wanted to make that forever, and I'm so glad
journey
to do it with you. It's way more fun that way.
Totally.
Because my husband won't talk this long about food with me. I need to bring it to you guys.
Well, thank you. We appreciate it.
Yes.
All right. Well, that's it for this time. We'll talk to you again soon.
Bye.
And now for the fine print. You can find recipe information and photos on Instagram and Facebook at 3 Kitchens Podcast. Why don't you leave us a comment and give us ideas for future episodes? We'd love to hear from you. And of course, if you like and subscribe and follow, all of those things help other people find us.
The focaccia is good, but it's a bit too salty.